guess who's back for one spooky collab?
What's up, Top 10 fam? It's Olivia.
And Rachel.
And it feels so good to be goofing around back here doing a collab with my best buddy.
If you're a fan of the Conjuring series, then we got a list for you.
Get ready for our list of the top 10 true stories scarier than The Conjuring.
Going by our mood, it probably doesn't sound like this video is gonna be very scary, but we're gonna try.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Michael Taylor. Alright, we are starting off strong with an absolutely wild one. This story is of course about an Englishman named Michael Taylor, and it comes from 1974. Michael was a husband and father of 5 children, but was unfortunately struggling with frequent bouts of depression, which is difficult for anyone to manage. Seemingly, however, when he met a 21-year-old pastor named Marie Robinson, these bouts became less harsh and much more manageable. So far, this seems like a nice little story about someone getting the help they need, but that is not the case at all. Apparently, he claimed his depression was getting better due to the pastor's ability to exorcise the demons that were plaguing him with this illness. Michael's wife was like, yeah, okay, likely story, and confronts him about what she believes is going on, which is that he is having an affair with Marie. After this confrontation, he physically attacks his wife, which then led to him getting an actual exorcism by 2 ministers on October 5th of 1974. During the exorcism, Michael had seizures, he spit at and bit the ministers, and screamed in tongues. After going through all of that, you'd expect this guy to be free of whatever the heck was going on, but unfortunately, the following day, he brutally took the life of his own wife. If all of this wasn't enough to make a dreadful story, he ended up not even being convicted because the defense argued that the exorcism made him insane.
Number 9, the Winchester Mansion. If you're a ghost hunter enthusiast, then the Winchester Mansion must certainly be on your bucket list for places to visit. It's certainly on mine, even though I'm an absolute scaredy cat, we know that. I just find the story so interesting and definitely spooky if you believe the tales. Sarah and her husband William Winchester amassed a huge fortune from their sale of the Winchester rifle. After her daughter died of TB and William left Sarah a widow, she consulted a medium who told her that she would be constantly haunted by the spirits killed by the Winchester rifle, so that could be like millions. She picked up and moved across the country, bought an 8-room farmhouse, and began one of the largest home renos in history. The house never stopped construction until she died in 1922, and then it opened as a museum a year later. It is said the house was built to trap spirits inside. The house contains many oddities like stairs leading to nowhere, drops in the floor like 30 feet, and the overall house is just weird. Her intention for this was to confuse any angry spirits who followed her. The house is 24,000 square feet in size. It has 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, 160 rooms, 52 skylights, 47 stairways and fireplaces, 17 chimneys, 13 bathrooms, 6 kitchens, and cost Sarah $5 million to build, about $71 million today. And a turtle dove, jeez. Today it's considered one of the most haunted places in the world and is well worth a visit for anyone seeking a scare. Ooh.
In our number 8 spot today, we have Gottliebin Dittus. This story comes to us from 1842 from a small German village. In this year, residents of the village began to notice some strange happenings coming from the house of a 28-year-old woman named Gottliebin. She was claiming that her house was haunted and began slipping in and out of what people referred to as trance-like states. Other than these claims and what was going on with these states, nothing truly extraordinarily weird was happening, of course, until a religious pastor came along and began performing an exorcism. Gottliebin became super violent, which feels like a pretty fair reaction to an exorcism, whether you are possessed or not, and ended up being physically restrained. Here's where things really go off the rails though. She ended up being restrained for 2 years while multiple exorcisms were performed on her. During these, she was seen vomiting glass, nails, and of course blood. Despite this horrific story, things ended on an alright note, with her telling everyone that the demons were gone and that Jesus is Victor. I don't know why, but that gives me the chills a little bit. I'm just hoping she lived the rest of her life being totally okay.
Number 7, the Bell Witch. The true story of the Bell Witch inspired one of the most terrifying found footage horror films out there, The Blair Witch Project, and as someone who's like terrified of the idea of getting lost in a forest, It was awful. It was terrifying. The story goes as follows and involves the family of John Bell. Apparently he had a wicked neighbor named, not like wicked like wicked, but like wicked, named Kate Batts, who believed that John cheated her out of land. Rumors circulated that she was a witch, but no one was sure until she passed on and cursed the Bell family. Her spirit reportedly would throw pots and pans, spill sugar, slam doors, rattle chains, the typical. But his daughter Betsy would be pinched and scratched and even sometimes beaten by an invisible force. Anyone who visited the farm though reported getting no trouble from the spirit, but they could hear her voice. High, scratchy, and shrill, which would aggravate if she got angry. The tale of the Bell Witch became so popular that people from all over the country came to see if it was true. Some even say that Andrew Jackson visited the farm. John reportedly fell ill mysteriously one year, and many believe it was the doing of Kate. 200 years later, the farm remains an attraction, and many still report hearing a shrill, scratchy voice when no one is around and see orbs floating around the farm.
In our number 6 spot today, we have Maricica Irina Cornici. This scary story came to us pretty recently in 2005. A Romanian nun was 23 years old when she began to hear voices. Despite the knowledge of mental health and mental illness in 2005, because of her background, she began to believe it was the devil speaking to her. She was diagnosed and treated with schizophrenia, but she eventually ended up falling back into this dangerous way of thinking. This is when she became the subject of an exorcism. She ended up being bound to a cross, which is the scariest beginning of an exorcism I've ever heard of. After being bound, she was gagged with a towel and left in a convent room for 3 whole days without food or water. I'm honestly not trying to make a joke about this at all, but that seems like the laziest exorcism I have ever heard of. In the end, she ended up passing away from suffocation and dehydration. The priest involved as well as other nuns were charged and convicted in relation to this crime, but most have since been released due to their short sentences, and all still continue to blame the adrenaline administered during the ambulance ride for her death, which seems like a very convenient excuse.
Number 5, La Corriveau. I first heard the tale of Marie when I was very little, and it resulted in me sleeping with my hands over my ears for 6 straight months. Like, I was absolutely terrified. Marie was tried for the murder of her second husband and as a witch. Rumors about whether her first husband was murdered started during her second marriage, but no one could prove it. One theory goes that she poured mercury in her first husband's ear, dissolving his brain from the inside. That's why I covered my ears. I thought that was just an awful way to go. Her second husband, Louis-Étienne Dodier, was found with several head wounds in the barn. He was on bad terms with Marie and her father, and though initially they passed it off as horse trampling, the two were put on trial. Her father was condemned to hang, and Marie was given 60 lashes and branded with the letter M on her hand. But then, Joseph, her father, admitted to only being an accomplice in the crimes, and it was in fact his daughter who did the deed. Marie confessed she killed him with a hatchet due to his mistreatment of her. She was sentenced to be hanged in chains and displayed for all to see in an iron gibbet, like a body cage. Soon, this is in Quebec by the way, the town began to fear her, for at night she would open her eyes and try to tear at anyone who would pass by from within the cage. This confirmed their suspicions that she was a witch, and they buried her in the gibbet, but it didn't keep her spirit trapped. Now she wanders at night near the river where she died, attacking any travelers who pass by. She is now solely known as La Corriveau.
In our number 4 spot today, we have the Phone Stalker. We all know that phones can be easily used to track our movements, but what if you found out that your phone was being tracked by a stalker? In 2007, 3 separate Washington state families began receiving a multitude of cell phone calls with eerily specific death threats being made to them. Families all explained that the calls came at random hours and included threats to all members of the family, including pets and grandparents. While a few families experienced this, one family in particular had the worst time with it. The family attempted to turn the phones off, got new ones with new numbers, switched accounts, everything they could, but they didn't get the calls or messages to stop. At one point, while finally explaining the situation to a police officer, all of their phones turned on and began calling each other. All the texts and calls were getting traced back to one member of the family's phone, but this was happening even when the phone was turned off. The parents took the phone away from her just to be sure, but the messages still continued on. Once while at the police station after returning home and powering on their phones, they received a voicemail which was a recording of their conversation they had just had at the police station, which let them know whoever was behind this was always listening. Whoever it was also always knew what they were wearing or eating, and once they changed their security system, the creeper called to let them know that he knew the new password. One family member was cutting limes in the kitchen when they received a message that said, "I prefer lemons." I wish this story had a better ending, but eventually the message messages trailed off, and it is a mystery that remains unsolved.
Number 3, here we go. What is it with demons and dolls? Can't they just leave them alone, or can I expect all the old Barbies and brat dolls I have to murder me? That would be nuts. This family thought they were safe buying their daughter an Elsa doll for Christmas in 2013. Nope, they were dead wrong, and not just because the parents would be tormented by constant Idina Menzel impressions. The doll had a button on its neck that you could press and it would say, "Let it go." For about 2 years it just said them in English, but then suddenly it started speaking Spanish too, which was weird, I guess. They had the doll for 6 years and never needed to change its batteries, which is also weird, and sometimes the doll would start singing even when the switch was turned off. In 2019 they decided to toss the doll, but the next day Elsa was inside the bench by the door. The kids said they didn't put her there, and the parents believed them because they wouldn't take out the trash, let alone dig through it. By this time the doll only spoke Spanish as well, I should mention. It just stopped speaking English altogether. They double bagged the doll, put it at the bottom of the trash can, the trash was taken out that very same day. The next morning though, Elsa was waiting for them in the backyard. So they decided to mail the doll to their friend in Minnesota, who then taped the doll to the front of his bumper truck. That's one way to solve the problem, but I get it though. When you've got a special childhood toy, it can be really hard to let it go.
In our number 2 spot today we have Alex. This story comes from a Redditor by the username of Mom Says I'm Pretty, but we'll just call them Alex for today. This story starts off when Alex was around 5 or 6 after their parents had just recently separated. Alex's mom was living in a 2-bedroom apartment on the ground floor, and although Alex had their own bedroom right across the hall, they liked to sleep in bed with their mom when staying over at her house. So, one night Alex is sleeping in bed with their mom, and there's an open window that is right above the headboard of the bed. For whatever reason, Alex wakes up in the middle of the night and looks towards the open bedroom door into the hallway, where you can see slightly into Alex's room just across the hall. It's then that Alex notices the cat sitting in the doorway of the bedroom, which Alex thought was weird because the cat was always sleeping in the bed with them. This led Alex to wake up their mom, and in the 5 seconds it took to do that and for the mom to ask what was wrong, by the time Alex and the mom looked back to the doorway, they both saw a man standing by Alex's bedroom door, making his way out of the bedroom. Alex's mom sprung into action and quickly picked Alex up and threw them out the window that was behind the bed. Remember, they're on the first floor, so it wasn't that far of a drop, and followed behind Alex out the window shortly after. The mom began screaming for help and called 911, and of course the police came. They didn't find any signs of forced entry, but the front door was unlocked, which led them to believe the man exited that way. The mom swore she had deadbolted and chain locked the door before bed, so she just didn't understand how this could have happened. About a week later, while cleaning, the mom opens the water heater closet and finds a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. This new discovery led both Alex and their mom, as well as the police, to believe that this man had been hiding away in the house, waiting for them to go to sleep.
And last but not least, we have literally anything involving Dr. Richard Gallagher. I've mentioned this guy before on MA, but honestly, ever since I've just been so freaked out. Richard Gallagher is essentially the go-to guy for the church when they're approached about performing an exorcism, to help distinguish between what's mental illness and what Richard calls the real thing. Gallagher is a certified Ivy League psychiatrist and calls himself a man of science. He heard of exorcisms but thought they were just ancient excuses for people with real mental illnesses, but now he firmly believes that demonic possession is real, without a doubt. Beyond the typical exorcisms, the turning point for Gallagher was when he met the Queen of Satan. It was one of the first cases he worked on, and a woman named Julie came to the church claiming possession. She was the queen of a satanic cult, so Gallagher wondered why, if she was indeed possessed, that she'd want to be rid of it. When he sat down to talk to her, she knew intimate details about his life, objects would fly off the wall, and once during a phone call with the priest, they both heard one of the demonic voices she used to speak around them, even though Julie was across the country. When he kept seeing cases like Julie, his views had to evolve, and now Gallagher lives in a world between reason and things that just can't be explained. It makes you wonder what could change the mind of a man of science to believe in possession.
Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out.
And make sure you smash that like button. Punch it. And let us know below in the comments which story sent shivers down your spine. Did you have to put on a sweater? Because it was such...
And can someone do some investigations and tell me who the phone stalker was?
Yeah.
Because I need there to be answers to that one. Anyway guys, I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski.
And I'm your host, Rachel Fisher. Bye.
How do you think you say this name? Maricica.
Cornici. Irina Cornici is the last bit.
Irina Cornici.
Maricica Irina Cornici?
Maricica?
Maricica?
Sure. Irina Cornici.
Because it's like Medici.
Right.
Cornici?
Maricica. A Romanian nun named Maricica. A 23. A 23-year-old Romanian nun. Oh.
Oh. Help me.
Oh.
Oh,
That was so Eeyore of me. Someone get me a stick. My house is down by the river.
And make sure you smash that like button, LMAO.